Montenegro has been a NATO member since 2017 and pays just over 2% of its GDP on defence. Its path to joining the EU is also well underway. It hopes to be the 28th member state by 2028. But there are many reforms that are still outstanding, such as independence of the judiciary and freedom of the press. For the Europe Conversation, I catch up with its president, Yakov Milatovic, and I asked him about these reforms.
So, President Milatovic, your country has been waiting 12 years in the wings as a candidate country, starting negotiations for accession. The idea is you're becoming an EU member by 2028. Is that practical or is that a reality still?
So when I became the president of the country last year, I was selected by the people on a very clear EU agenda. We have set an ambitious goal, indeed, but I believe still a realistic one. And this is about Montenegro becoming the 28th member state of the EU as of 2028. I believe that what has been good news is that there is a new momentum in Brussels, also in the other capitals of the member states about the enlargement. I believe that the whole situation about the enlargement really changed in 2022 following the Russian invasion of Ukraine, where also Europe, the EU, understood that the enlargement policy is also about the security of the European continent.
Because if you look at some of the outstanding issues, because as you mentioned there, it is merit-based and there's a huge focus on rule of law. And some of the outstanding issues are the independence of the judicial system, freedom of expression, press freedom and corruption. So there are some of the pillars. But if you look at, for example, press freedom, there are concerns and what has been described as a hostile environment for investigative reporting from Reporters Without Borders, that there's self-censorship and often political pressure applied to journalists. And that hasn't evolved much over the last couple of years.
Well, there are challenges. If there are not challenges, we would already be, the part of the EU. But this is why I truly see the EU accession process as a key anchor, which constantly reminds the policymakers about the reform agenda. And this is all about the rule of law, about good governance, about economic development, about public administration reform, about the media environment. I believe that ever since I became the president, I was very clear that for me the EU accession is indeed about reforms, not only about trying to get some EU funding for different infrastructure projects. That's important, but I believe what is even more important is to be able to use the process as a transformative way for your country, which would ultimately benefit to the people, because we all want to live in a society where there is a clear rule of law, where there is a clear good governance, where there is zero corruption.
And do you believe that from a cultural perspective there is an effort to ensure that journalists are allowed to practice without fear or favour or intimidation?
There are challenges still. There are cases from the past about the attacks on the journalists that still have not been fully
investigated.
Sort of brought to an end. Whenever I speak, and I have recently spoke at a very important conference on the media environment in Southeast Europe that was hosted by Montenegro, those are exactly the points that I have focused on. I believe that the fundamental of democratic development is a free media environment, competitive media environment, freedom of speech, this is really a crucial part also of my public endeavors. We have made progress. Unfortunately, certain setbacks have happened as well, especially when it comes to independence of our public broadcaster. I think that that's something that needs to be corrected in the future in terms of editorial independence.
And then also corruption is one of the areas that you have actually increased in terms of improvement on when it comes to Transparency International, but there are still concerns around criminal corruption, corruption within politics, and also smaller things like petty bribery and so on. Is that an area that you're heavily focused on?
Absolutely. And when I also became the president, I was very clear about the policy that I'm pursuing, and that's the policy of zero corruption. I believe, fundamentally, that's the basis for economic development. Over the many past years, and this is exactly what we are, now realizing. Many of the people within our judiciary system who were appointed to fight corruption and organized crime on behalf of the people of Montenegro were actually part of organized crime and corruption. Now many of them are being processed, so there is a clear progress, especially within our prosecution, now also within our court system, so that things are moving in the right direction.
You mentioned there enlargement as very important in terms of security for the whole of Europe. When Montenegro had high levels of Russian interference, it was around foreign policy decisions about becoming a member of NATO, independence, and probably you will see some interference. Are you concerned about that, or what can the country do to try to defend itself from interference?
I believe that a very important decision that Montenegro has made in the past was becoming the member of NATO. In 2017, Montenegro became a member of NATO alliance, and that really made Montenegro more secure, more protected, and more resilient when it comes to the threats from the third countries. Definitely, that over the past few years, NATO and other NATO members, helped Montenegro to make sure that the whole system becomes more resilient. I think that the challenges were the biggest within the cyber space. The country was faced with a number of cyber attacks, our public administration as well. However, the efforts that we have put together with some of the countries from the EU as well as from NATO made the whole country more resilient now. And it's always about the joint effort. But being part of a collective security, defense mechanism such as NATO, and naturally, pursuing the same foreign security policy as the one of the EU, it all makes a lot of help.
It's interesting you make that point. What would you say to countries like Russia, for example? Sometimes you hear it in Serbia, that the reason for the war in Ukraine is because of NATO enlargement encroaching into Russia. What would you say to that argument?
I mean, from the very day one, that Montenegro has supported the choice of the Ukrainian people when it comes to their Euro-Atlantic future. I believe that every nation has its right to choose its future. I believe that Montenegro's NATO membership back in 2017 was good for Montenegro, but also was good for the region, the wider region of the Western Balkans, which also had its own challenges in the past. I believe that Montenegro's NATO membership strengthened the stability of the region, and now Montenegro is also perceived by many as a credible NATO member. So, in that regard, our position is very clear.
What's your own interpretation of President Zelensky's victory plan? Do you believe that Ukraine should be offered a path to membership, a formal path to membership, more than the indestructible bridge, in order to have a strong position to end this war?
I was very happy to attend the Peace Summit in Switzerland, which was held a few months ago. I believe that was the right step in the right direction. Many of the world nations were there as well, supporting the peace plan of the President Zelensky. I think that the position of Montenegro was also very clear when we supported the NATO decision last year to elevate the relationship with Ukraine, from the formal level that we had, which was the commission between NATO and Ukraine, to to the more strategic relationship that we currently have.
But do you believe that Ukraine should be, like President Zelensky is calling for a formal invitation as part of the victory plan? Do you support that?
This is definitely going to be sort of among some important discussions that are going to be held between the current NATO members, especially ahead of the next summit in The Hague. I believe that also NATO has been very supportive to Ukraine over the last very challenging period. Now you know that we also have launched the so-called NATO mechanism for support of Ukraine. So there are all very important steps when it comes to the just peace in Ukraine, which is ultimately what the goal is.
So you would support, if it's on the table, membership?
Well, I said it's going to be part of the discussion.
Okay. Yeah, just final question before I let you go, because we know that in the call with Donald Trump and Mark Rutte in relation to NATO, Donald Trump made it clear that Europe has to do more heavy lifting. I don't know if in your conversation with Secretary General Rutte, he explained to you a little bit more about that. What does it mean Europe needs to do more heavy lifting? Are we in charted territories?
Well, I think, ultimately it comes to the spending. And, as the President Trump had already, put the focus on it when he was previously the president, I believe that that's going to be, again, the focus, which is good for resilience of Europe in terms of security, in terms of its own defense industry, and Montenegro is part of the alliance. So in that regard, I think it's good for Montenegro as well.
Okay, well, President Milatovic, President of Montenegro, thank you very much for joining us on the Europe Conversation.
Thank you very much.